This week on Hack Naked News, Google drops a new Edge 0-day. Hackers are finally sentenced for SQL injection attacks that cost $300 million. 32 lawsuits over the Intel Spectre and Meltdown flaws. Apple rushes to fix the latest text bomb bug. And more this week on Hack Naked News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News.
Most of the organizations I work with, they have
released. Yes, you read it.
Actually do
the original Linux kernel security with Linux.
So I hope everybody has their resistance built up.
Brought to you by Domain Tools help security analysts turn threat data into threat intelligence. They take indicators from your network, including domains and IP addresses, and connect them with nearly every active domain on the internet. Those connections drive risk assessments, help profile attackers, guide online fraud investigations, and map cyber activity to attacker infrastructure. Fortune 1000 companies, global government agencies, and leading security solutions vendors use the Domain Tools platform as a critical ingredient in their threat investigations and proactive defenses. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/domain tools. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Hack Naked News, episode number 162 for February 20th, 2018. Paul Asadorian is out again this week, so you've got me, Jason Wood, again here providing this week's news. And with me for our guest commentary, we have a special guest of having Mr. Larry Pesce with us. And so he'll be providing that commentary here in the second half of the show. A couple of announcements this week. Go to itpro.tv/securityweekly and use the code SECWeekly30 to try it for free for 7 days and receive a 30% discount on your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. So go check it out. While you're taking a look at that, also check out our on-demand material. Some of our previously recorded webcasts are available on demand for your viewing pleasure. Check them out at securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, this week's news. To start off, Google has dropped a new Edge browser 0-day as Microsoft has missed the 90-day deadline to provide a patch. It turns out Google isn't joking when they say that they're going to disclose vulnerabilities that are not patched within 90 days of being notified. On February 15th, Google made public a vulnerability with Microsoft's Edge browser. The flaw was originally discovered back in November and is part actually of Edge's secondary layer of defense called arbitrary code guard. Now, to get to where you have to deal with this vulnerability, you already have to compromise the browser via some kind of initial attack. And then you have the second layer of defense to protect against arbitrary code being run inside the browser. This flaw allows for the bypass of ACG. Google's decision to drop this flaw publicly, even as Microsoft explained that the vulnerability was a little bit more difficult than they expected to patch and is giving a current release date of March 13th, has ignited some debate over Google's ironclad deadline. Moral of the story is, if Google contacts you to say that they've found a flaw in one of your products, they're not joking about that deadline. The 90-day clock is ticking. Hackers are sentenced for SQL injection attacks that cost $300 million. And this should better be said, hackers are finally sentenced. The wheels of justice turn extremely slowly, but apparently they keep going. Now, some of our listeners, or most of our listeners, may remember the Heartland data breach that occurred back in 2009. That's right, 9 years ago. The breach was huge news at the time. particularly since the payment card brands shut down Heartland's ability to process payments, thereby cutting off basically their entire revenue stream. The size of the breach was also the largest, at least at that point, known breach of credit card information. Approximately 160 million credit cards were compromised and put on the black market. Prosecutors pegged the damages for 3 corporations alone at $300 million in losses. Wednesday, the U.S. Attorney's Office of New Jersey stated that 2 more of the perpetrators had finally been sent to prison, and this is after pleading guilty in 2013, so 5 years later. At this point, prosecutors have 3 of the attackers in prison and are still hunting the remaining 3. It may be an old breach now, but law enforcement is apparently still actively working this case. The fallout from Spectre and Meltdown continues. There were 32 lawsuits now being filed in response to these attacks. According to Ars Technica, Intel's latest SEC filing basically states that it's facing 32 different lawsuits over the vulnerabilities in their processors. 30 of these cases are class action lawsuits, quote unquote, for the consumer. And the remaining 2 are securities lawsuits relating to alleged false statements by the company during the 6-month period after Intel was initially notified of the flaw. And then there's actually an add-on here that says, and there are 3 more, which I believe takes our count to 35, not 32. But regardless, 3 more lawsuits out there stating that Intel's board and corporate officers have committed a breach of duty in not pursuing alleged insider trading activity by Intel CEO Brian Krasnick, I believe is how you would pronounce that. So now instead of just dealing with the technical side of things, the lawyers have now gotten involved with their fix, which is to sue everybody that they can think of. Apple rushes to release the latest text bomb bug as abuse spreads. So maybe you've been having a little bit fun with this particular flaw. Apple, sending it to your friends who are Apple owners. Basically, you send a message, text message or something like that to a buddy with an iPhone or a Mac using characters in the Telugu language. These characters cause applications in iOS and Mac OS to crash when attempting to process the characters and display them. Now, I can personally attest to the fact that this works very well in the Messages app on Mac OS. Got to play around with that a little bit last week. Apple has responded now that a patch is now available for download. It does require a reboot of your Mac OS systems and obviously your iOS devices. But at least you don't have to worry about the killer Telugus now. Happy patching, everybody. All right, why Chrome's ad filter isn't actually an ad blocker. Google has released a new ad filter in Chrome to address some of the really annoying ads that we get pummeled with. The filter is designed to address some of the most annoying and disruptive type of ads that get tossed in our faces. These include the flashing animated ads that cover the entire screen. One of my all-time favorites, the ones that start playing sound on you automatically when you hit the page, as well as many other annoyances. And I keep using the word annoying because that's just the best I can come up with other than saying it really pisses me off. The update has caused quite a bit of rejoicing from some folks who look at this and seeing this as Google supporting ad blocking natively in Chrome. The only problem is that's really not what's happening here. Google has no intention of blocking ads. They want to still have us be able to see all those ads that claim one crazy trick to pay off our mortgages and cure any disease. What Google really is looking for, though, is to just try and make some of these ads a little bit less egregious and offensive to everybody as we try and check out different pages. So we don't actually get an ad block out of this. Don't get rid of your ad blockers yet, but at least some of the more annoying stuff will hopefully decrease. And finally, NIST floats the Internet of Things cybersecurity standards. NIST has publicly unveiled their new security standards publication 8200 on Wednesday of last week. This publication contains their recommendations to address security on IoT devices and the related apps. The draft document is a lovely 187 pages long, which I'm sure is a incredible page turner. NIST has stated that they have found, oddly enough, that adoption of security standards has been slow by vendors. And in all honesty, I don't really see the document changing the speed of adoption by any stretch. However, when attacks start happening and brands start getting damaged and things start showing up in the news, at least the standards have been published, and for something for us security folks to point at to the vendors and say, here's what you should have been doing a few years ago when this was published. I apologize for my lack of optimism, low level of optimism in how IoT is going to address the security of their devices and applications, but this seems to be the way things get handled in general. With that, we're going to take a short break and come back with our guest commentary by Mr. Larry Pesce.
IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. Watch over 3,300 hours of content in their on-demand library on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for teams by visiting itpro.tv/Security Weekly and start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off standard or premium IT Pro TV memberships using the code SECWeekly30.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hack Naked News. A couple announcements before we get into our guest commentary section. InfoSec World is happening March 19th through 21st of 2018. It is at Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Security Weekly subscribers can save 15% off the InfoSec World 2018 main conference or World Pass with the code OS18-SW. Also, HackWest 1.0, The Wild Bunch, will be held in Salt Lake City on March 21st through 23rd. Go to hackwest.org to register and get a 25% discount with the code SWHW 2018, and I'll be there actually at this conference. So if you're there, come by and say hi to me. I'll actually have a table. With that, let's move on to our guest commentary. With us today, we have Mr. Larry Pesce. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks. First time caller, long time listener. Wait, what?
Exactly.
Is that how this works? Yeah, this is weird to be the guest on like a show on the network that I participate in. So fun stuff.
Yeah, well, welcome. It's great to have you here. And yeah, it does seem a little odd to have you be a guest.
Yeah, so I mean, this is your rodeo, not mine, right? But, all good, all good. So as Jason and I had discussed, I'm assuming, Jason, I'm free range at this point, right?
You are free range. Have at it.
Excellent. So I put in a couple of things that I wanted to discuss today. Two of them, and I'll keep both of them relatively short. But one of them is a little bit older that we've talked about a couple things, but it's one of those things that I want folks to think about going into the future, that it's going to be more and more of a problem. And one of the things that Paul and I have talked about for many years is that this concept of moving to the cloud and folks not realizing they need to do just as much to secure the cloud infrastructure as they do their real hardware-based infrastructure in their own data center. And all those same type of logical controls apply. And one of the big ones that we're starting to see now was this tool called Buckhacker, which is currently offline and has now even been retired and being brought back with a new crew, the Buckhacker crew. So instead of Buckhacker, it's now the Buckhacker, which was a tool that went offline because there was lots of there was lots of banter about whether or not this was a good thing. And the intent with Buckhacker was for scanning Amazon S3 buckets, so moving your storage to the cloud, and then folks not setting the appropriate permissions on that bucket of data, that S3 bucket. So they were open to the world for, quote, anonymous, either read, write, or you name it. And if they were available for anonymous read when you connected to the buckets, they'd offer you the first 1,000 files or so you could find. and then be able to start interacting with those buckets. During some of the research, we started now seeing folks connecting to these buckets and uploading their own little love notes, as it were, as in, hey, I was here, and you may want to consider securing your bucket that's open to the public internet. We've heard reports of folks' main contents of their website being available in these buckets, and additions would be hosted from the main website of various companies, and kind of scary for what could have happened with some of these. So some things to think about. Moving forward, continue to consider your cloud-based infrastructure the same way that you would in your own data center. It's the cloud is just on someone else's hardware. Make sure that all of your security is done the same way you would in your own data center. Make sure that all of your access controls are appropriate, and that you don't have all of the things open to the internet. And practice the principle of least privilege with this. So while Buckhacker is not sort of available, and the Buckhacker is becoming available, it's still offline as of Valentine's Day. So they're still respooling back up the project allegedly. But there are other tools out there that we can use for scanning our own buckets as well. One of those being, pardon my list there. Where did it go? Here it is. Wrong tab. It is called AWS Bucket Dump from Jordan Potty. And he wrote an article at Rapid7. Now, this is a little bit older tool, but it's out there, and it's available and still being updated as of a month ago or less. So the tools out there exist. Use those to go audit some of your stuff, or someone else's for that matter. Do it with permission. The other one that I wanted to bring up, which is very much something that came up within the last couple of days, was kind of interesting in that there's a company that has used some malware allegedly called some functions within Chrome within some of the malware to dump passwords. And the folks that are distributing the software are using this functionality within Chrome from some of their tools there to dump passwords from Chrome to be able to acquire allegedly the install license codes for the Flight Sim Labs A320 flight simulator desktop software. So the point is that they're looking to see if Chrome has used these keys at all as part of the install for their desktop software. The point is that they're trying to find these to gain access to some information stored in the system to thwart piracy. Me personally, I don't think this is necessarily the right way to do this. So by using what Security Exploded's tools to do the password dump from Chrome to see if the passwords were used and or the keys were used in their own software. I think there's probably some better things that they can do to make sure that these invalid license numbers, and they're valid, but they're pirated license numbers used all over the place. I suspect there's probably some better things that they should be doing as opposed to dumping all of the passwords from your browser. I get what they're trying to do, but I think they're doing it very, very poorly and potentially acquiring way too much information there.
So Larry, as I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm looking at the article you've got linked, so this is the installer for this software is essentially extracting information from Chrome from somebody who's installing their software and just dumping it all of them to them so they can see if they're pirating their stuff.
Exactly.
Well, this sounds an awful lot like Sony's DRM thing that they put on their CDs back in 2005, 2006.
Yeah,
where they
I would argue that it's
computers
probably worse than the Sony DRM thing, because I think the Sony DRM thing was relatively limited in what they acquired. They're saying, I'm assuming that they're saying that they're only acquiring one part, but they're dumping so much more. Correct me if I'm wrong on that Sony thing.
Give me it all, and we'll look at it later to see if our stuff is there.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh my, yeah, no kidding.
So yeah, some other things, when installing software. Now, legitimate business use for a flight sim, maybe not so much, but very much the de rigueur of some of the software manufacturers do lots of things on your system that you may not know, and knowing what's coming out of your network for traffic is very important, and getting some ideas with some desktop-based firewalls and some restrictive rule sets, especially in those areas when you're doing that pre-install testing in your test environments before we roll it out to the masses. It's very important to understand what some of your software applications are doing.
Lovely. So not only do we have to worry about attack from the bad guys, we have to worry about attacks from our vendors.
Yes, and some vendors are more legitimate than others, and I never thought I'd have to say that, but it's true.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, great. Appreciate having you on the show this week, Larry. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again.
Absolutely.
Thanks to everybody for tuning in for this week's episode of Hack Naked News, and we will see you next week.